you need to make it simple for the customer. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It's your problem to solve that things aren't really very neat in the back end. So it's just kind of really working through those things and then trying to break it. So that's the reason why I did it as a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet which is visual, but I wanted to see if I change this here, how does that compare to other tiers? And can I break it? Can I make it not make sense? And I think that's a really good thing, stress test it, and then let other people do the same thing. And they come back and go, dude, that doesn't work. So at the moment, we're deep diving internally around pricing and packaging and bundling and stuff like that. And it's something that we've been, our heads have been in a lot. So we've been listening to other things, looking at other other companies that are doing great things in the way of pricing. And we've been struggling with this. We're not struggling, but we've been debating this internally, and we kind of realized it's a really interesting area. Obviously, people make whole careers out of telling people how to, or helping people how to work out their pricing. We wanted to just kind of talk about some of the things that we've observed and some of the conclusions we've come to. If anyone's out there and thinking, struggling with the same kind of questions that we were, this might be interesting. So yeah, do you want to, I suppose, kicking off with the customers?
Exactly. I think that what's quite interesting is that, when we started ScreenCloud, life was simpler really, because we were targeting SMBs and mid-market, and the product was not particularly complicated. And so we came up with dead simple pricing, which was $20 per screen per month, and a bit of a discount if you pay annually. Simple as that. And you know what? We were bang on. And the only reason, actually, I remember the day I decided it was going to be $20 rather than 19 or 21 or whatever, is because I'm really bad at maths. And so it would be easy for me to calculate when I was on the phone. So I made it a nice round number because I'm not very good at maths.
It's funny how that number has also kind of become because obviously since we launched, there have been quite a few people that have kind of copied us a little bit. Actually, that $20 thing has become the kind of norm.
Maybe they're all bad at maths as well.
Yeah. or discounting off the $20 or whatever. But yeah, it's like almost that's the anchor point, and then everyone else is kind of like...
Yeah, but that's about as strategic as it got. And then we were just sort of grateful for anyone that would pay. Now, obviously, we've relaunched our platform, Studio. We've done a huge amount of what you would say is like enterprise grade features in there. Some of them are sort of the table stakes enterprise features like SSO, audit logging, more granular user permissions, etc. But other features are more unique to ScreenCloud, unique for challenges that we see kind of the larger companies having. And therefore our pricing becomes inevitably a bit more complicated, where we still want to serve that SMB client base, but also we don't want to leave money on the table with those bigger deals, also because they are bigger, more complex deals with what far greater demands on them, and they need to be priced accordingly.
And also on top of that, it's just to sort of say that the added complexity, which again other people might face, is as we're adding in new services, the way that we're being charged for using those services as well. So there's specific things around cloud rendering, for example.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's trying to kind of balance like how you're getting. You obviously don't want to lose money. You wouldn't run a business if you do that. But but at the same time, if the way you're being charged is quite complicated or quite convoluted, you don't really want to pass that on to the customer. So you have to kind of balance that simplicity of pricing with the complexity that you're getting, and making sure that you're not kind of getting screwed.
Yeah, and we also want like our sales and marketing teams to be able to tell the story really easily and not have to kind of keep coming back with like, oh, I've done the pricing this way. So it needs to be something where we can give them the calculators and the tools where they can easily, quickly create quotes, and even the customers be able to generate their own quotes on the website too. Because I hate that whole talk to sales and we'll just pluck a number out of the sky. Like that just seems Machiavellian. It should be, I feel like we should be being more fair to customers equally. I've always felt like scamming one because they're a bigger logo than another. It just felt wrong, morally wrong. You should be being paid a proper amount of money for the service you're providing, irrespective of whether you think that that's a company with loads of cash in the bank or not really. I mean, we obviously have our education and charitable discounts. That's the right thing to do, I think. But in other respects, I don't think going, ooh, it's Apple, let's like whack up the fee. I just think just doesn't feel right, doesn't sit well. And it's also complicated because it's like, well, how much should we judge whether these ones are ones we should rip off more? But I know that a lot of companies do that.
The other thing is that we're increasingly, we've started now selling through the channel. And, you need SKUs there. So you have to kind of,
you have to be consistent.
Yeah, you have to formalize this to an extent and say, it's this, it's this.
But yeah, I mean, as well.
The other thing is for us as well is that we've been experimenting a little bit with the sort of more enterprisey prices, and that's partly why to date we've kept the prices off the website, because we've been seeing what works, what resonates, and then that's another hard thing. I mean, again, it was kind of easy with the $20 per screen per month thing, so it was just there and it was easy, everyone got it. But so yeah, we've been experimenting, which I think has been a good thing because we've got feedback, and you realize you have an idea for a price and you go out and you actually talk to customers and they're like, but what about this? What about that? And you go, It doesn't work.
So maybe where we begin is like, so this is going to be a bit of a navel gaze and also kind of a summary of some of the research we've been doing, because neither me nor you, David, I think we would both agree, are like experts on this by any stretch. I feel like totally fraudulent on this subject, as per my earlier disclosure. So what do we do when we don't know what to do? We research, right? And for me, that I'm a podcast consumer. Make the podcast and I listen to the podcast. So I'm going to give some shout outs to some other good ones. And I think that actually I just listened to one the other day, which really was brilliant. It was a podcast called Enterprise Ready, which I think is actually a great podcast. So shout out to them. And the episode was with Adam Gross, if I'm saying that right, who was the ex-CEO of Heroku. When Heroku was just a hosting SaaS company, was bought by Salesforce. He was already working at Salesforce because Salesforce, I believe, had acquired his business, which I think was an analytics business. And then when Heroku came in, they wanted to turn Heroku from being very much a developer-friendly, kind of maybe smaller company hosting platform, up to being like more like Salesforce with enterprise tiers as well. And so they appointed him CEO, and then he kind of really radically improved their growth up market as part of the sort of Salesforce family. But Heroku is still an independent brand. We actually use it as well for a lot of our apps are deployed on Heroku because it's a really simple way of deploying apps to cloud. It's not a Heroku ad. I'm just going to give some context. And so I was listening to this, and what I liked about what Adam was saying was, this is a man with a hell of a lot of experience here, but he kept it simple, which I love it when people do this, especially when they're really experienced, because what they can see is, although there is complexity and whataboutery and all of this around the edges, at the end of the day, they can take a zoom out and go, but this is what it really, here's the consistent patterns. So what he said is this, broadly. There are only 3 types of B2B SaaS customer. There's a creator, there's a team, and there's enterprise. And in what he meant by that was, at the very beginning, at the lowest tier, if you're a SaaS company which is open to all, like we are, and like Heroku. So Heroku has a free tier, like 1 developer, 1 project. You can do some hosting on it. You don't have to pay anything, limited features. But if it's like a side project, a pet project, non-commercial, it's perfect for that. You're just working on it on the weekends, whatever. Now
so does it have to be non-commercial? Is that one of the stipulations, or is that just a suggestion?
I think so. I think it is. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I believe so. Right. A lot of the similar developer tools are like that, where it's like, if it's non-commercial, it's free, but there's also restriction about the fact that it's just you on your own. Now you could share the login with someone else and stuff. You could sort of slightly game it, but the reality, so, and that's your creator. So if you think about ScreenCloud, someone with like one or two screens, a very small number of screens. It's either a small business where they've only got two screens, or it's someone inside a much larger company who just has this little pet project of, I want to get this stuff on screens around my environment. That's a creator too. It's just, they just happen to work for a massive global brand, but that's not enterprise because they work for, Unilever. It's because they've got this little thing, and they probably even put it on a credit card and expense it or something. It's not even official.
Yeah, we've definitely got. I mean, one of our company's customers is works for a massive corporation, and I know for a fact that he actually pays for it. He doesn't even expense it.
Right.
I want it for my work, but I'm just going to pay for it. I can't be bothered with the admin.
A little bit of a hero. Love that guy.
Yeah, I know. But also he's a big evangelist, and he wants to. He says he's like I will help you kind of get elsewhere in the company. But yeah, nice. Right now he's paying for it himself. Yeah.
Oh, I'm tearful. I want to know. We need to buy him lunch. So that's your creator. Then if you go to the next stage is very simply teams. And I think this is really the big insight from what he was saying, is like, look, the creators, they want the same things. The team wants the same thing as the creator. They just want to collaborate. So if you think about it from the developer tool Heroku, it's now just 3 or 4 or 5 developers collaborating on a project. Like what the needs of that one developer doing their own side project is actually no different from the needs of the 5 in terms of how to deploy to live, how to bug track, how to do all of those things. But what they need is a layer of organization and collaboration over the top, which means that chaos doesn't ensue, so that they don't overwrite each other's code, or they can get notifications when someone's done a pull request or whatever it might be. And so actually all the features of teams, and teams can go from being, a handful of people to being like hundreds of people, is just about collaboration and how all of them can then benefit from this creative tool, but also be organized in such a manner that things don't go off the rails. And, not everyone has the same permissions, because not everyone in a team is of the same sort of levels and should all be admins and all of this sort of stuff. And he's like, you can make enormous amounts of money from teams. And what he was saying was, often, and I am like, ding, ding, guilty as charged on this one, jumping from creator to enterprise and sort of forgetting about teams. Yes, enterprise needs the teams features, but not seeing teams and enterprise is different. And really all he says is with enterprise is compliance. Enterprise is just coming in with like, look, if we're going to do serious amounts of this, if we're going to really rely on you as a piece of infrastructure for our company, then there is due diligence and certain things that need to be done in order for us to actually commit to you. And that is just knocking off layer after layer of compliance, and it sort of never ends. And the more you do, the more valuable it will become. But none of those features really actually change what your product is delivering to those teams within those organizations. You're just delivering it to way more of them with that stamp of authority from the CIO, CTO, CEO, CPO, whatever, any other C person you can name, and security saying, yeah, cool, we're good. And he actually said if he was starting a SaaS business, he wouldn't even think about those enterprise tiers until you get to 10 million ARR. Now, funnily enough, that's basically broadly where we are. And we are now beginning to think about those tiers. We probably thought about some of them a little early. And actually, maybe what we did is we kind of, although some of those features were inevitably team collaboration, if I look back at how we've implemented for teams, yes, the raw ingredients are there, but the workflows are not that seamless. You don't get notifications when someone's done something and needs publishing. Like, we haven't really dived into the team's experience as well as we could have. And that's probably something we've slightly overlooked. Now, it's been on the list, don't get me wrong, but actually we've been looking at these dreamy enterprise features and be going, all right, let's do them first. And actually it's sort of the raw, assuming that we're taking what he says as verbatim and not challenging it. But I like this. It's made me feel, I was walking around the park as I usually do these days. That's, my freedom hour or two, listening to this thing. And I was like, I get it. I believe you, and actually now thinking about that creator, that's where, even ideas of like a free layer, which we're sort of exploring, we may not do it. We might not be right for us, but you know, like giving the creator enough to create and no real restriction, you know, no talk to sales nonsense, no like 14-day trial we've got. Like, what if we could just let them just do what they need to do, roughly enough to do what they need to do. And then actually the next layer up is just really like, I suppose if you had that free tier, you probably have like a sort of starter tier, like just a small business tier. Then you've got your teams tier. Then you've got your bigger business tiers, which is probably just the same as teams, just with more volume. And then you've got the enterprise stuff, which is like the custom things and, you know, all of those needs. And I don't know, that just suddenly for me, it was like a bit of a eureka moment. And I was like, yeah, right. You're right, man. Oh, and by the way, you've also got 30 years SaaS experience in B2B. So you're almost certainly right. I was like, this is good. And then, well, one, let's talk about this, because I know I talked about, because this was one's come from me. And then it comes back to how do you then bundle and price around those types. But what do you think, David? Because I only landed this one on you yesterday.
Yeah, it definitely.
So we do a podcast about it the next day.
Yeah. We're experts. No, I think it does make sense. It does make a lot of sense. I suppose one of the things is there's not a fine line between teams and enterprise in that sense, because there will be some, as the teams get bigger, there will be some compliance stuff that they need to
inevitably, yes,
just because they're
yeah.
Oh well, we are blah 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 PLC or blah 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 Inc. You know, FTSE 100 or whatever. Fortune 500 or and therefore we have certain legal compliance issues. However, I think it makes absolute sense to think about it in those terms. And a team, as you say, could be a marketing team or a sales team within a big organization, or it could be a location, it could be a country within a big country. And as you say, if they're then going, well, actually, look, we want to roll this out company wide, and we've got 16,000 employees or something, then you can imagine that the priority there will be more around some of the other questions that we are getting, which is about as an organization, can we access the cloud? Are we allowed to access the cloud? What do we do about secure data and secure dashboards? All those kind of questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. SSO, I guess, is one of those things that it's such an obvious, simple thing, but for some people it's just a blocker. It's like, look, I love this product, but unless we can use SSO, I'm physically not allowed to do this.
So that's what they call the enterprise table stakes, right? Like, you just have to do those things. Now, we've done those things, but actually there's a lot more to enterprise beyond that. Like, that's just kind of like, that's your ticket to the party, right? Like, all right, I'm in, but then you're in, but you're in a whole new arena at that point. So
I think what's really interesting actually is what you said earlier, is thinking about it in those terms. Because when you're doing product development, the temptation, I'm not a product developer, and I don't want to kind of diss anyone in that team, because it's very, very hard, I know. But I guess the temptation is to go, what is the cool new feature that we can do? Like, we had this brilliant idea, we could do this, and it's probably something quite cool, quite sexy, quite something that no one else is doing.
I would slightly disagree. I actually think the bigger problem is that people go, this is a feature for small business and this is a feature for enterprise. And there's this enormous gap in the middle where there's actually loads of overlap there, which is thinking more about the people rather than the business that they operate in.
So I suppose
the creator, rather than the fact you work for Unilever versus the fact you work for Bob's Bar, it's like, actually the person is the creator, and their needs and wants are probably, their desire for good UX, their desire for certain features is probably very similar, even if their audience is a little different. Yeah,
I suppose so. My thinking was like, coming back to something you said there, was actually, if you're thinking about it in a different way, if you're thinking about, well, what are the key things that you would need as a team to make this work, and what are those collaboration tools, understanding who's doing what, understanding maybe really good player audits or user audits and that sort of user logs and stuff like that, which again is probably is kind of less sexy than some of the things like the Canvas app that we're doing. But actually, if you think about those, it's almost like, okay, well, that's the kind of basic hygiene stuff that we might have overlooked because we weren't necessarily thinking about customers in that way. We might have been thinking more about what cool things would people want in this industry or this sector or this size.
Yeah. But actually, what I like about the Teams analogy is suddenly you're not going, is this small business, mid-market, or enterprise? Because let's say it's a small business. It could be the team is the business owner, the site manager. Let's say there's a few locations, like 3 locations. So it might be 3 site managers, business owner, and then maybe the other parts of the team are their freelance or outsourced creative agency or advertising agency or HR or whatever it might be, like, you know, and it's still a team. It's just, it's a team in a different way, like how we used to have like outsource finance and other things. And then, you know, certain people in the organization. But then in a big company, it's still a team. It's just teams in different departments or, like you say, different locations or different regions. But actually the need for those 5, 6 people to collaborate is the way they collaborate is probably quite similar.
So I suppose one of the things that we wanted to sort of has come out of this, or is certainly a corollary of this, hasn't come out of it because we've already been thinking about it, is how we then package this pricing up. So we've been really looking at bundling as a kind of concept, and it makes more sense now that we've got more features, some of which are more appropriate for different users. So again, this is something we've been going down, and one of the I can't remember the blog, sorry, the podcast, but there was a really good podcast there talking about how one of the things that came out that was really interesting, it was this concept of a la carte pricing versus bundling. And in actual fact, one of the great ways of doing bundling is to have a la carte pricing. So it allows people to have transparency. So the way we're thinking right at the moment is that you've got your bundle price, you come in and you get X, Y, and Z, and then you have a series of add-ons. But really, what we don't really want you to do add-ons in that tier. The purpose of those add-ons is really to encourage you to go to the next tier, because going to the next tier, all those add-ons would be included. And actually, it would work out better financially for you to.
I found the podcast because I think this podcast is absolutely gold, right? So the podcast it was on is actually, strangely, it won't sound like it should be about this topic, but it's called Invest Like the Best. And the guest is called Shasir Mehrotra. Oh God, I'm saying his name wrong. We'll put it in the show notes. Shasir Mehrotra. And it was the art and science of the bundle. And his background was that he ran product at YouTube for years around YouTube's kind of, subscription service that they were doing, and is now on the Spotify board of directors. But I believe he also, because he talked a lot about cable TV. So maybe he just had studied it, or he'd worked at like Comcast or something.
Yeah,
he talked about the art form of bundling TV channels together as like the most well-known bundle, and it was fascinating. I mean, I think you probably dived into it even more.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about the 4 myths of bundling. It's definitely worth reading because it's difficult to to summarize it here. But so I guess in a nutshell, people were saying bundling is bad. It's not good for the consumer because you effectively pay for things you don't want. But it's really interesting listening to his rationale, and I think if that's the way you're thinking, it will change your mind. And it just, so we'd already been talking about doing bundling, but it was this a la carte thing that really kind of like was a light bulb moment for me, because suddenly it all made sense. And suddenly it was really, really, one of the challenges we had was people going, well, I like that bundle, but I don't want this, and I don't want to pay for that, and I only want this. And we're like, oh man, it just falls apart straight away. But actually, if you have these a la carte options in a lower tier, you can go, look, yeah, sure. If you only want this or you only want that, go for the lower tier and add them in. But what you find, if you price it correctly, is, very soon it becomes better for you to go to the upper.
And the classic bundle I think he talked about there was like a kind of McDonald's or Burger King type thing where you can clearly see the bundles, right? And he said, and the bundles they have to, I've actually found the 4 myths so we can go through them. Because I think it's really interesting. And again, we're totally plagiarizing other people's work here, but we will credit it all because you should go deep. But it's a good primer for you. But again, like, why does bundles work in fast food? Is because you can clearly see, like, each bundle, a Happy Meal is clearly aimed at a parent with a kid who really just wants the toy. Whereas, you know, you kind of got the other bundles, which is like, all right, I want a burger, I want a drink. The fries are basically free. I may as well have them, or other way around, you know. But the reality that you know that the value is good is because you've got your a la carte pricing to the side and go, actually, I really just want a burger. I don't want any other stuff. You can see that you're actually probably paying almost the same amount. So you know the bundle's recent value, so you don't push back on it. And actually, I think in the interview, he was saying the reason people think that like cable TV bundling is such a rip-off is because they don't get the a la carte option. You know, they're like, well, why couldn't I just buy ESPN? Why can't I just buy the sports? Why do I have to have the other 100 channels? And actually, if they'd a la carted it where the sports was almost the same thing, you probably would just take the other 100 channels and go, okay, I might as well have 99 other channels on the off chance I want it.
It's pretty much the same price, yeah.
So, shall I quiz you? Can you, right, so the four, because I've got it here, it's just so unfair, right?
I can't remember what they are.
No, fair play. Okay, so myth one was bundling is bad for consumers.
Actually, I said that. I did say that earlier.
Yeah, you did say it. You got that one. And I think we've understood, like, you know, and he talks about, he had a kind of different way of thinking of customers, didn't he? He was talking about, you've got your casual fans, your super fans, and then the no fans, like people just don't want it. The casual fan is quite interesting, where like the casual fan is like, I'm into sports, like, you know, I support a team. I probably watch my own team mostly. I might watch like a few, like, you know, if it's Real Madrid, Barcelona, I might tune into that. So that's like a casual fan, which is like, I like this stuff, but it's like not my thing, not my complete life. And then you've got like a super fan, which is, oh, this plays a significant part in my life. I watch any game, no matter what team is playing. I'm a lover of the sport. This is a big part of what I do. And what you're saying, like the bundle should be more like attractive to the casual fan, because the a la carte is more likely for the super fan, because they really have specific and high use needs where they're going to be able to pay a lot more for that premium because they want so much more. And what you don't want to do is give the super fan everything they need in a bundle aimed more at casual fans, of just kind of going, because the casual fan could be turned off and just say, oh, you know what, like it's a bit expensive. But if you go, well, look, you get another 99 channels for free. I mean, you like your sports, but like you've got all your other stuff in there, like some kids channels for their kids. Like, you know, there's the history channel. You never know, you might want a documentary one day. And that's kind of how it works, right?
There's a really, like, so Price Intelligently approach this in a slightly different way. They plot your features on an axis of willingness to pay on one axis and then perceived value on another. And they give a really good example of something that's high perceived value, sort of high willingness to pay, and high perceived value would be something that's quite specific. So something like horsepower. For most people, they wouldn't really care if they were buying a car. They wouldn't really care that much about horsepower, but some people really, really would. And
a super fan would, like a kind of a hot, what they call them, those. What do you call people who are really into the cars, like the racer guys? Hot. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who clearly aren't us.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, all power to them. But like, I couldn't give a shit what the horsepower. I wouldn't even know. And
something like that would be a classic add-on, because you wouldn't bundle that in, because for most people, they just go, why am I paying for extra horsepower? I don't give a shit. Whereas someone might say, I don't know, I really want it and I'm prepared to pay for it. Whereas something like airbags would be something that everyone would value. Everyone would say that's got a real high perceived value, but my willingness to pay for that is really low, because I would just expect that to be it. I mean, SSO is a good example of that. People generally think you should just give it to me because that's a basic thing.
So in many ways, what you've just done is uncover myth 2, which you've forgotten.
I'm just a natural,
You're really good at this. Yeah, and this definitely was not rehearsed, because we don't have time and we never do this. Okay, so myth 2 is revenue from bundles should be allocated based on usage. And that's broadly, I think, roughly what you're saying. I mean, it's not quite the same. And it's basically saying that it's actually, rather than distribute kind of like the revenue allocation of the bundle to what's being used the most, it should be to marginal churn contribution, not usage. So like if you took it away, the bundle would suddenly lose a lot of value. But they may not be a key kind of thing. It's like, you know, maybe like the airbag, right?
Yeah. If you suddenly said, "Oh, we don't include airbags," you'd be like, "Well, I'm not buying the car then.
I'm not paying for that." But it's like, all right, so you really want airbags as a premium feature? It's like, no, So that's your marginal churn contribution. Like, actually removing airbags would make that bundle far less attractive, even though the usage of airbag hopefully is minimal, i.e. never. But
like insurance,
the
though.
fact it's there is good, right? So that was pretty good. I wonder if you can get, well, we kind of talked about myth 3 already, so I'll just go out with that one. Bundles will always feel like a rip-off to consumers or businesses. I think consumers and businesses all kind of coming together a bit, since they represent a lack of choice. But we talked about that a bit, like that's the kind of, okay, well, you have your a la carte menu, and clearly if you do the math on it, the a la carte menu should show you that the bundle is actually in your interest. And then hopefully the bundles are sufficiently organized in a way that there's a bundle that appeals to you, that you're not like lost without a bundle, unless you are like literally a super fan who would probably dismiss a bundle going, well, I'm a very specific user and I value my a la carte thing and I'm willing to pay more for it because of my pickiness and because it actually might even make me feel better, right? Like I often feel like that in restaurants when, kind of people are putting on meal things and I'm like, you know what? I don't want it, like, not all the time, but it's like, I just want to pick exactly what I want. And it will cost me more. I don't care.
If it's like, 2 courses for £25 and a glass of red wine or something, but it's only these glasses of red wine.
Yeah. And it's like, I wouldn't enjoy.
I've got a way more discerning palate. I need the expensive Malbec.
And as regulars will know, like good French red wine is one of my key kind of needs in life, which is why I can't do your full non-drinking thing.
I'm at nearly 300 days now, I think, or maybe 250. But yeah,
200 days without some of life's greatest pleasures. I mean, you have to have it every day.
I will go back to drinking, but I'm
gonna break you. But like when we hit some big milestone, I think we've got a few that might come up this year. I'm gonna come round to your house and I'm gonna bring a fucking brilliant, amazing bottle of red wine and open it in front of you. Let it breathe.
Yeah,
and I'm just gonna go just a little bit, David. Like which is pretty cruel, actually. I'm probably being a bit evil. I'm not sure this is going to help our reviews that we have to ask for at the end, is it? Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, but Mark is a bit of a sadist, trying to like.
I know, a lot of people bandwagon. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. Yeah.
Luke's on a 3-day fast. I mean, what's going on? He's not eating.
Who's on that? Who's fasting?
Luke, our co-founder. Yeah,
wow.
Every day. He's 72 hours, no food. I'm like,
it's supposed to make you feel amazing after 5 days. You feel like,
well, of course you would. You're starving.
Hi.
I mean, oh my God, everything's going to taste great after that.
I suppose until you do it, you don't know how hard it is. Like giving up drinking.
I'm pretty sure it's hard.
Giving up drinking is not hard, I don't think. Well, I haven't found it.
Not eating food when you need to eat, that's definitely tough.
That sounds tough.
Wine is a luxury, not a necessity. Anyway, myth 4. Let me see what I've got here.
Tony's going to be on our case soon. He's going to say, dudes, you're way over time.
I know. Well, don't worry, we'll wrap it up soon, mate. The best bundles are narrow and have very similar products, so they make sense to consumers.
Yeah.
So
there's no point in kind of bundling, I don't know, a Big Mac with a bottle of red wine or something. I mean,
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or bundling a Big Mac with a toy. If you're going to do Happy Meal, do a proper Happy Meal.
Yeah.
Don't just whack in a random toy everywhere. I was like, oh, I got a toy.
Yeah.
So, and the thesis is the best bundle is one that minimizes super fan overlap and maximizes casual fan overlap. So I think what I'm also saying is like super fans could do bundles. They won't want the a la carte options on top of it. But like, and I think the classic easy one is I'm into sports, so I want the sports bundle, or I'm into movies and it's and I want the movie bundle, or I'm into music and I want the so you've got your super fan camps where they're really coming from one angle or another. And actually I think we haven't really done this in our bundling, have we? Yet. That doesn't mean we have to, right? I mean, I actually think the bundle work you've done is really interesting. There isn't an obvious kind of I'm on the security bundle versus I'm on the creative content bundle or branding bundle. We haven't really done it in that manner, but we're not McDonald's,
The other thing is you don't want too many bundles if you're doing B2B SaaS because it
Yeah.
gets really confusing. It's different when you go into a McDonald's. Actually, how often do you go into McDonald's and just stand there like paralyzed, going,
A bit overwhelmed.
I don't know, I don't know. You definitely don't want to do that with your customers. Yeah, but
in fairness, the guy is coming from YouTube, Spotify, cable TV background, so he was doing it in a consumer thing. But I think there's so much we can learn from this. So having your spreadsheet is very, very, you're very good at spreadsheets, and it actually looks good. It's like quite well designed. It looks kind of nice. Like it's almost a bit of a UX thing too.
I don't know why they don't make it more UX. They would give you more of a design tools within spreadsheets actually, and the ability to kind of click things and things to expand and close up. I'd love that, but
prototyping tools, I guess, do it, but they probably don't then have the engine of numeracy behind it to actually do the calculations.
Yeah.
But like, I suppose as our parting words of advice, you've just gone through working all those bundles out. What's the advice you give people who are just going, how the hell am I going to do bundles for my product?
I think, read as much as you can, listen to as much as you can, and also look what people are doing. There's some really good examples out there. I mean, we looked at Framer, we looked at HubSpot, and I know that those guys have put a lot of effort into it because I know some of the people that have been part of that journey. There is some good. I mean, the thing is with all these things is there is always a playbook, isn't there, within SaaS?
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent things because people have tried it and failed and learned. And so I think it's definitely worth.
All right, let me ask a tougher question then. In our case specifically, what was I'm sure you rattled through a load of it and a load of it made loads of sense. What was the point where you really crunched and went, oh, this is hard. Oh, how are we going to get through this? The
hardest thing for me was reconciling this concept of how do we charge customers for something how to explain this in a simple way? Like we charge customers a per screen amount, but our costs aren't based on screens always. Sometimes they are, but often there's no relation for some of the things that we're doing. So you could have one screen or a million screens and the cost to us would be irrelevant. It was to do with how you're actually using those screens. Mm-hmm. And that was quite hard to reconcile. And I think we came to a really good way of solving that, which is kind of probably too complicated to explain. But
no, it's fine. Yeah.
I think thinking those things through, thinking like you need to make it simple for the customer. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It's your problem to solve that things aren't really very neat in the back end. So it's just kind of really working through those things and then trying to break it. So that's the reason why I did it as a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet which is visual, but I wanted to see if I change this here, how does that compare to other tiers? And can I break it? Can I make it not make sense? And I think that's a really good thing, stress test, and then let other people do the same thing and they come back and go, dude, that doesn't work. Or actually,
and I think that's an interesting learning takeaway is basically, the costs that you bear are not necessarily how you should be reflected in your pricing. Pricing should reflect how a customer sees the value, and not necessarily how the business kind of actually has to structure and create those costs as well. And that's a key thing with pricing. Right. I think that's us today. Yeah. Hopefully that was useful. There definitely needs to be some links to those podcasts in the show notes. Otherwise we hopefully have done justice to those very intelligent and experienced people. And I think all that's left to say is, if you made it this far, would you consider giving us a review? I don't think we have very many, and hopefully it's a nice review. So if you would go on your podcast app of choice, Apple or whatever it might be, and just hopefully hit the 5 stars, or 4. Anything less than that, don't review, please. If I'm honest, it doesn't help us at all. It hinders us somewhat. Then that would be lovely, because then we might get a few more listeners, or viewers, I guess. And I guess if you're on YouTube, subscribe. What do the kids say? Subscribe, like, hit me up in the comments. Be nice. Don't have a flame war. That's it, I think.
Okay, till next time.
See you then.